Hello, salam, shalom, namaste, sat sri akal, aloha, ciao, bonjour, and buna. It's so awesome to be with you again. And, I know you're going to be very happy you're tuning in today because we have a very special guest, Korey Samuelson, who's a mental strength coach. And I'm so excited, Corey, for what we're going to be talking about today. So please welcome, 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 and tell us more about who you are and what you do.
Well, thank you very much for having me. I really appreciate being on your show. And you were saying that you use all those different languages. And how many is it that you're using there? Do you know?
I think the last time I counted, we were up to 10 different greetings, although sometimes I
Uh,
might miss one or something. So I can't promise how many I just made right now.
Fair enough. Thought I'd just put you on the spot. I was just curious. So my name is Korey Samuelson, and I'm a mental strength coach. I sometimes go by a cognitive strength coach or a resilience trainer. And the idea being that the challenges in life are mental challenges, and they always are, even in the most physically demanding scenarios that one can put oneself into. It's still a mental challenge, and we fail more in the poor choices that we make than the body itself. And even when the body fails, that's when we absolutely need to be mentally strong,
Yeah.
because that's like the foundation of any type of strength. And sometimes I actually do say that physical strength is a circumstance, just like being, you know, in a situation where you're living in a home, or if you're homeless. I mean, those are circumstances.
Right.
And so being physically strong is just like being in any other circumstance, because the body, it does what it does, and we just live in it sometimes, and it does its own thing. Sometimes it's things we prefer, sometimes not so much. So I
Yeah.
focus now more, because my background is fitness training and I'm still involved in that, but I focus more on the mental strength that we need, as opposed to just building up the body, which is still very important. And I still totally am into that as well.
Nice. Actually, one of the things when I was first getting to know you, Corey, that I really loved is how you are able to sort of take what you teach about building physical body strength, and use that to help people learn how they can, build better mental fitness and mental
Mhm.
strength. Um, and I just absolutely love that because, like you were saying, um, it's like, yes, the physical condition of our body is a circumstance, and really so much of our life experience is and the results that we see in our lives and all that, it's really about what's going on in our minds. But
Mhm.
also like our mind and body are so intricately and intimately connected that for
Yeah.
sure our physical health has an impact on our mental health and our mental health has an impact on our physical health.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah. And I called my company Stoic Strength. And the reason is because Stoicism to me fit my way of thinking even before I was exposed to it. When I started to read what the Stoics had to say way back in ancient Greece and Rome, I thought, wow, this is the path that I'm on. And obviously it wasn't identical, but it was very similar. The main themes were there. And one of the main themes is that we only can choose how we deal with things. It's
Mhm.
not what happens to us. It's what we think about what happens to us. And my favorite Stoic philosopher is Epictetus. And his teacher, Musonius Rufus, he actually did say that there are two paths to wisdom or to a good life. And one of them is more, I think he put it in the terms of, it's more spiritual. It's more to develop the soul, as they would put it. And then there's the physical where it's, working through the body. And in the end, he said, the best is to do both at the same time. So you meld your physical development with the development of your character and your soul. And I love that. And that was another reason where I thought, yeah, I like the Stoics. So I kind of took that branding onto myself, although I might not be a very good interpreter of the Stoics. I may not understand their points as a Stoic philosopher in modern day would, but I still consider myself on their team, so to speak.
Yeah, but what you're sharing about their philosophy with me right now, I feel on board with that too. In fact, what you were just saying about the two paths to there's a spiritual path and then there's mastering your body path. It made me think about yoga actually, and that's very much also the idea with yoga. Like in Western culture, most people, when they think about yoga, they only think about it in the context of the physical um,
Yeah.
yoga postures and doing it for physical training as a form of physical exercise. But really, if you look at yoga as, the tradition that it is and the roots of how it developed and so forth in India, it really was always meant to be a discipline that provides a way for you to simultaneously create this yoga. So the word yoga actually means union. And so they're talking about the union of your mind and body and spirit. And so yoga is meant to be a practice that allows you to achieve that union and sort of, create growth in all these aspects of your life. Hey, thanks for tuning into this episode. Hope you're getting value out of it. For your information, this episode has been sponsored by the Happiness 101 program. Are you a change maker, coach, trainer, or healer? Are chains of fear holding you back from making the impact and income you desire? Using a unique combination of positive psychology and the spiritual wisdom of our most effective change makers, the Happiness 101 program helps you break through your limiting beliefs and manifest the abundance and success you desire with fun and ease. Interested? Book a free Happiness 101 exploration call with me, your happiness expert, Samia Bano. Just use my online calendar link in the show notes. Now, back to the show.
Yeah, I think I'd heard that about the union before, but I'm not a yoga expert either in my physical training, so I wasn't sure about that. And what occurred to me as you were saying that was that even in entrepreneurship, for example, people who are building a business, in the beginning, it's very much about, okay, what tactics do you use? What strategies do you need to use? And about maybe the equipment, the technology, like the cameras that we're using right now to record these podcast interviews, the mic that we're using. But from what I've heard, as you go further and further into the path of entrepreneurship, it becomes less about, again, the material itself, and it's more about mindset. And sometimes it becomes, again, a path of self-development, because from what I've heard, I mean, I'm very early in my entrepreneurial journey myself, but when you get to the levels of, say, a Tony Robbins or, oh geez, I'm drawing a blank on any other business names at the moment, Gary Vaynerchuk, Warren Buffett, that it becomes a reflection of the character of the person that is actually implementing the business, the strategies, the tactics. And yeah, it becomes just as much about the character development there, even though it's about dollars and cents and sales and influence and all that kind of stuff. So it's very interesting. If you take something far enough, it almost starts to say the same thing, whether we're talking about different spiritual traditions or working out or playing a guitar or building cabinets. And, yeah, you can get into that. And at the upper levels, I think that's where mastery in the end lies, is that the
Mm-hmm.
mindset, which is why I'm into mental strength more, because
Yeah.
that's in the end is what you have.
Yeah, for sure. I agree with you. And when it actually comes to business, even when you're just starting out, it really is so much about the mental game, even then, at every stage.
Mm,
And because, yes, when we are starting out, we tend to be more focused on the strategy and the tactics and what technology do we need to use, because for a lot of us, like, for me, I know those were the new aspects of what I had to deal with. And in some ways, it also a lot of the busy work that you need to do or get done in order
mm-hmm,
to, get your business going and progressing and so forth. But with the whole time, there's always a mental component to it also, because if, for example, you don't have the right kind of confidence, you don't have a good, healthy money mindset, you don't
mm-hmm,
have, a good ability to create and maintain healthy relationships, all of these things are going to impact your ability to grow your business or even start your business maybe in the first place and
yeah,
maintain it, over time. So there's always that mental component that's present. Um,
yeah. Yeah, I wasn't trying, I hope I didn't suggest to
yeah,
anyone or try to make it seem that I was suggesting that it wasn't a part of the journey the whole time, but it's in the beginning when you don't even know what to do. It's easiest and obviously the most obvious to say, okay, what step do I take? And then,
yeah,
okay, so this coach or this business person who is a mentor is going to say, okay, well, what you need to do is A, B, and C. And it's less, even though the mindset is there, it has to be there. There has to be a
yeah,
bit of
yeah,
an expectation of, say, success or achievement.
yes,
But in the beginning, those tactics are easier to deal with. It's like being in the gym. It's like, okay, so what exercise should I do?
yeah,
What does the workout look like? How many times a week do I go? Because
mhm,
those are things that are tangible and it's easier to deal with, as opposed to, well, you get into the mindset of you are a healthy person and you have to accept that, and don't look at the condition of your body right now.
mm,
Think of what you want to be and who you want to be. And that becomes very esoteric. It's more the nitty-gritty details in the beginning. But then when you get a handle on that, then all of a sudden mindset can be approached, because everything else is, well, that's second nature. I go to the gym, for example. I work out 3 times a week or 5 times a week. I know how to do that.
yeah,
Now it's about, okay, so what's happening above the neckline, so to speak? Yeah, just to clarify.
yeah. I guess it's partly maybe also an issue of like teaching pedagogy, in the sense that um, I have seen, I think, an evolution happening. For example, um, even like 10 years ago, 15 years ago, well, it was for me, I started my coaching training business about 10 years ago. And
Mm-hmm.
even then, um, like when I went to, because I didn't know anything about business and how to do business, I would just wanted to get into this because I was so passionate about sharing what I had learned about how to be happy, how to create inner peace and so forth in my life. And I was like, okay, so I want to start my own business, around this. And so I started taking lots of classes and going to different trainings and seminars. And for sure, like 90% of the focus was on strategies and tactics and, all of that kind of stuff. Um, but I have seen in the last 10 years, there's been like a shift, or maybe I'm just more aware of it, where now the more and more and more I'm seeing of even the business coaches, especially the best ones that I have been able to connect with and find and work, more and more they're starting to emphasize, even from when you first connect with them, they're like, we have a module in our program that's focused on mental health. Or, we have
Mm-hmm.
this component to our training that addresses the limiting beliefs that people hold, because more and more, people are recognizing just how much it's the mental side of things that holds
Mm-hmm.
people back. Just like 2, 3 days ago, I was talking with a sales coach, and she was like, um, saying the same thing, where she was like, when, you know, she had started her practice, she would just focus on teaching people the strategies and the tactics of how to become an excellent salesperson. But
Mm-hmm.
she said, I was realizing that a lot of my clients weren't able to benefit from my teaching because they weren't implementing what I was teaching them, because they had all these limiting beliefs and
Mm-hmm.
blocks that they couldn't overcome. And so they couldn't apply what I was teaching. And so they didn't see the results. And so now, she builds in this like mental health component in her practice too. And I was like, yay, I'm so glad you're doing that. Because as a happiness expert, I really appreciate, people's um, um, appreciating and understanding how important the mental strength and the mental health aspect of things is.
Yeah. And that's very similar. That's almost parallel to my progression as a fitness trainer. Because
Mm,
in the beginning, you do get certified and you learn, okay, this is what the goals are for when you interact with a client. This is what you're putting them to, helping them to understand as far as exercise. Here's your posture. Here's what you're thinking about. Here's how your joints move. This is a correct technique. But in the end, what I realized was that yes, when the fitness client was in front of me and I was helping them in the gym, they could do everything that I asked. But the challenges that they were having was in the time when they were outside of the gym and they were on their own. And
yeah,
it was choosing to go to bed on time to get enough rest, choosing
yeah,
healthier foods, choosing to actually show up for the session.
yeah,
Those are the moments. And that's why I became a mental strength coach. And I started to look at the the strength to make what I call the excellent choice or the
mhm,
virtuous choice, which ties back to how the Stoics would put it. But it's a bit of an older word. And so I use excellence instead. And the thing, however, is excellence as a standard is very, what is it? What is excellence?
mm,
And in the end, it does come down to you have to set, again, standards that are tangible. It's
mm,
not just, oh, I'll know it when I see it. That may be true, but if you actually define it beforehand, then you can make the choice to live up to that standard in the moment,
yeah,
and you will know when you're being excellent. And if it's not a standard, then you can relax and you're not beating yourself up
mm,
when you don't. What I'm trying to say is sometimes people hold themselves to standards that they don't realize they're holding themselves to,
yes,
and they start to beat themselves up, like maybe again social pressure, or if they go on Instagram and they see all these lives that have been curated, and like, oh, my friends are doing this and these people and these celebrities are doing that, and my life isn't there. But
mm,
those goals might not be theirs to begin with, yet they're expecting themselves to be at that standard, and they end up beating themselves up about it when that's not even what they want. So
right,
you get into that nitty gritty of, okay, what is it that I want? How do I define excellence for myself in
yeah,
my character in the goals that I want to achieve, in the life that I want to live. And when you know what those standards are, then it becomes just a matter of, the word integrity. It's just keeping your word to yourself to live up to the standard, but not anybody else's standards. That's up to them. And they can't, and they shouldn't, if I could use that word, they shouldn't have any influence on what you feel about your own life. If they're earning $10 million, if they have six-pack abs, if those aren't your goals, that's perfect. That's their life. This is mine, right?
Yes, I love that. And what you're saying about, like, if you know how to define excellence, that is so important. That oh my gosh, that is, I just absolutely love that part, and just made me think of, like, in a different context, how that is so important. Because I'm more, on the mental health side of
Mm-hmm.
things. And so I was thinking about how, in the context of trauma healing work, having these uh, uh, understandings of, what being mentally healthy, being, like, the different stages of trauma healing, sort of like what the markers are. So, when you
Mm-hmm.
look at where you are, you can be like, okay, this is where I am, and I can get there. So for example, one of the paradigms that we often talk about in trauma healing is the victim to survivor to thriver paradigm.
Mm-hmm.
That, when you first experience the trauma, uh, or you're in if you are still experiencing the trauma, that's when, you're sort of in the victim stage of things, and there are certain feelings and experiences that you're going to be having, um, because you're experiencing that trauma at that time.
Mm-hmm.
And so, um, it's like, okay, but then once you are out of that danger, or that crisis is over, then, it's like, okay, you can focus on begin this, recovering, start the recovery process, the healing process. And so then you are in the survivor stage of things. And then there's, like, all these different, you know, again, emotions and experiences that you go through in that context. Um, so for example, feeling angry about what happened with you, or feeling depressed because of what you experienced. These are actually stages of the healing process. And if you can recognize that, then you can be like, there's nothing wrong with me for feeling this way. This is a part
Yeah.
of my healing process, and it doesn't stop here. Like, I keep going, and from, feeling these feelings, we eventually reach to the stage of acceptance and integration of, these experiences. And then, actually then you move to being a thriver, over and in that context, it's like, now when you're a thriver, it's a very different mindset, where you've become more, like, you're able to look back at what you experienced, and you're able to focus on the learning and the growth that you're experiencing, and reframe,
Mm-hmm.
that
Right.
whole thing. So anyway, the point is that I know for me, because I'm a trauma survivor too, it was so helpful to understand this, and to be like, I want to get to that point. I want to become a
Mm-hmm.
thriver. And these are the things I'm working on achieving, for myself. So I'm working on like, being a thriver. Like, one of the markers of it is that you stop blaming and judging yourself. So
Mm-hmm.
to get to that point, of excellence in my mental health, where I'm not blaming and judging myself, or, doing it much, much, much less. Um, that, like, for me, that was like one of the markers, for example. And it was so helpful to have that and to know that.
Yeah. And it's the possibility of it in the
Mm,
beginning.
yes.
When you're like you're sitting in the survival and maybe, as you put it,
Yeah.
the victim mentality, to realize, oh, there's a level that I can get to. Others have done
Yeah.
it,
Yeah.
so I can too. And also, I'd like to just, because it occurred to me again as we talk, the mind just does what it does and thoughts pop in, that it's not just a straight shot from, oh, here it is, and then there it is. It's like up, down, back, loop back a little bit, go over here, get
Yeah.
lost, like, oh, I don't know where I am anymore. This is working and getting back. And, so it's more of a, and I know personally that I did martial arts for a number of years, and I remember having this idea of what martial arts were because I'd seen the
Mm,
movies and I'd seen the TV shows, and it's just like, it's a curated image
yeah.
of what martial arts are. At least when I was a kid, we didn't have, the what is it? Ultimate Fighting Championship, where you do see how messy it is and how
Mm,
out of control, not out of control, but how chaotic and how unclean it is. And you have to scramble, and that's life. And as I was saying, I don't like the mess as much. I want everything to be nice and, oh, that's very clean. I know exactly what to do. I'm going to just stay in this lane. But that's not life. Life is basically, you take a step forward and then you hit something, or life comes out of nowhere, and you know, then you pick yourself up and you're all greasy and grimy, and then you have to show up and do something. And
yeah.
I don't like this. I don't like how I feel. And so, yeah, it's more, again, it ties back to, like you said, that reframing, where it's,
Yeah.
no, okay, this is how it's supposed to be. This is normal.
Yeah.
This is fine. And
Mm,
I'm going to deal with this. I dealt with what I dealt with in the past. I'm still here. I'm surviving. I'm trying to get to thriving.
yeah.
And yeah, that's that's a good, I like that. I'd never heard that thriver um, position before. I'd always heard it stopped at survivor. And
Right.
I like
Yeah.
that, and that it rhymes. I like that.
Oh my gosh. It's one of the missions of my life to make people more aware of this thriver stage, because you're
Mm,
absolutely right. Most people do not have awareness that there is this third stage. And because, traditional psychology and clinical therapy and all that would just focus on helping people get back to the point of recovery, which is
mm,
becoming a survivor. Recovery is defined as getting back to a state of wellness that is as good as when you experienced the trauma. So
mm,
basically, that was the goal of the therapist, when, like, if you were working with a mental health therapist and all, their goal was to get you back to that point of recovery.
right.
And so that's what they did, you know. But the thing is, okay, turns out you can do better than that. You can get back to the point of recovery and then keep growing in your
Right.
wellness.
Mm,
And so that's where the thriver stage comes in, and it's more technically called post-traumatic growth. So it's like
right.
at a physical level, we can make it an analogy of like, let's say if you have an accident and you break a
Mm,
bone or something,
yeah.
and so then the doctor plasters you up, and if you're bleeding or whatever, they will uh, you know uh, do whatever is necessary to get you back to the point of good health, so you, your arms no longer broken and stuff. And
Mm,
then your treatment will stop in most cases. But in this um, paradigm where we are aware of post-traumatic growth, where the doctor would be like, all right, so now your arm's not broken anymore. You're back to the level of wellness you were before you had this accident. And now what can we do to make sure you become even more fit than you were before and
Right.
increase your level of fitness, you know?
Yes.
And so become more strengthened, become more flexible, improve other aspects of your health, and so on and so forth. So that's the difference.
Yeah. And the reference point that a person would have, because I I don't know if everyone thinks like this, but I always think in metaphor. So because of my fitness training, I think about fitness metaphors. But in this instance, I was thinking it's almost like you fell down a hill
Yeah.
and then somebody helps you claw your way all the way back up to the where you were.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
then they're like, okay, bye.
Yeah.
Instead of, okay, so let's make sure that you don't fall down this hill anymore. So
Yeah.
maybe walk over here a little bit, be a little bit more aware. So they help you train your awareness, for example, or they help you build the strength to stop yourself from tripping, or they work on your balance and,
Yes.
that kind of thing. So you actually do become stronger and you
Yes.
are in a better position so that more than likely won't happen again because you
Yeah.
are stronger. You're in a
Right.
better position, even
Right.
even better off than someone who hasn't fallen down that hill before. You've
Yeah.
got a strength that they don't have. And
Yeah.
that's part of the reframing.
Right. That's right. And so there's that you learn to not fall down, or if you do fall down, now you know how to get back up to that point again much more quickly and effectively because you've been through that learning process, but then
Mhm.
also tracking further up the hill if you desire,
Right. Yeah.
assuming that going further up the hill has more advantages to offer and has the ability to improve your level of wellness and so forth even more.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, very, very interesting. I mean, obviously, I don't have any background or any education in trauma or anything like that. I do a lot of reading in philosophy, psychology, personal development, um, books, and productivity and stuff like that. So I run across many, many different ideas, but I definitely don't want anyone to get the idea that I know what I'm talking about as far as trauma victims. That's for sure, because
Mm.
that takes special training, psychology and whatnot. So, but
Yeah,
but
well,
just life itself
yeah,
is
for sure.
you. If you think about it, that's where we experience our trauma. It's being alive. It's just going through life.
Right.
Sometimes things
That's
happen, come
right.
out of left field, and even as even as just normal people, we can figure out how to be stronger
Mm,
having gone through something. And again, fitness training metaphor,
yeah.
that is how you become physically stronger. You
Yeah.
actually have to get to the level where you are hitting your ceiling as far as your strength, and you
Yeah.
have to try to break through that and get to a higher level of strength.
Oh,
And it only comes with the resistance that
yeah.
you are lifting or pulling or pushing against, that kind of thing. Yeah.
Yes. So you keep, oh my gosh. Yes. So actually, let's, because ultimately everything's so connected, and like you were saying earlier, if you take learning deep enough in any field, you begin to sort of find the same lessons. And so I would
Mm-hmm.
love for you to, I mean, my gosh, so you have already mentioned like some examples of, life lessons that we can learn through uh, you know, uh, the process, through understanding the process of physical training and physical fitness. Can you give me another example of like what amazing life lessons you can learn and how you can build more mental strength by sort of understanding better the processes and the ideas of physical strength building?
Sure. I'll give that a shot. So one of the things that as a trainer that we help our clients understand is that there is a more correct technique for a specific exercise. So for example, there's something called a forward lunge, we'll say, where you're standing and then you take a slightly exaggerated step forward. So it's not like you're just going to walk. You actually go a little bit further with your foot and then you lunge down so that you look like you're in a half kneeling. So one leg is in front, one leg is behind, and you might even touch the knee to the floor. So there are things to think about technique-wise that will make that a safer and a more effective exercise. And if you take that metaphor of correct technique in an exercise outside of the gym, then maybe getting up in the morning, for example, if you're challenged by that, we'll just keep it really basic. So if the alarm clock goes off, if you're using an alarm clock and you struggle and it's always like, oh, I got to drag myself out of bed. There are things that you can do technique-wise that happen before you go to bed, the evening before. There are things that you can do as you're getting up in the morning that will, again, make the, in quotes, technique of getting up in the morning when the alarm clock goes off better, right?
Yeah.
And if you think about not every moment, again, because there are so many moments in life where we have to make choices, but when you set a standard for yourself, and you might start with only one, you might say, okay, I'm going to get really good at getting up in the morning so that when I do wake up, I'm going to feel fantastic, as opposed to just another day. Like, this is another, can I sleep 10, 20, 45 more minutes?
Yeah.
So if you look at just that one choice of, I want to wake up and feel good,
Yeah.
then just focus on that. That's kind of the goal, separate from all the other goals that you have with work, relationships, finances, whatever it happens to be. And you just think, okay, this is what I'm going to make excellent in my life. I'm going to work on the technique of getting up well. And that it kind of fits.
Example? Yes, it does. I get the point. Can you give an example of like a little bit of the technique that you could utilize to make getting up in the morning more easy? And then maybe we can sort of extrapolate from that a more generalized life lesson.
Sure. Yeah. So there are a number of things one could do, but the easiest and the most obvious is to get to bed on time. Now, how quickly a person falls asleep, again, the body does what it does. And if you lay down in bed and think, okay, it's time to sleep, you might not fall asleep. But if you have a certain time where you say, I'm going to be in bed 30 minutes before I want to be asleep, for example. So you just relax in bed, maybe you read. I wouldn't recommend getting on your phone, because then you're staring at a little tablet and light is shining into your eyes. But a nice dim glowing night light, maybe read for 10, 15 minutes, get a little drowsy. You could do some breathing exercises to relax. But knowing that you have to get up at, say, 7 o'clock in the morning, figure out, okay, so how much sleep do I want to be getting? And again, you can't force your body to sleep. Other things might happen. Maybe you need to get up and go to the bathroom. Maybe a neighbor makes noise. But if you just say, I'm going to go to bed 8.5 hours before I need to wake up.
Yeah.
Then you're giving yourself a good opportunity. And if that seems unrealistic, well, then, maybe only 7.5 hours before. So you're trying to get a solid 7 hours. But the idea being that there's something that you can do before, almost like a chef would do, the mise en place, where they set up their cooking station to be most efficient. You do the same thing with going to bed. So that's one thing that I would recommend.
Okay, so the more general life lesson that we apply from this process is the prep is really important. So whatever action you want to take, um, it's not just about that action in itself.
Mm-hmm.
It's also about how you prepare prior yourself, prior to, and your environment prior to taking that action. And you just made me, in that context, think about how in the Muslim tradition, we're required, if you're being observant, you are
Mm-hmm.
required to pray 5 times a day.
Mm-hmm.
And we are taught that you shouldn't just stand up in prayer, like I'm talking about ritual prayer, of course, in this context. So you don't just stand up and just begin the ritual prayer process. There's all this like pre-prep that you do.
Mm-hmm.
Like, for example, there's a ritual washing process that you're supposed to go through
Right.
before you start the official prayer process. And
Mm-hmm.
the ritual washing process is actually part of the prep that helps you begin to shift your mindset
Yep.
out of, all of the worldly concerns and things that were keeping you busy, and begin to shift into a mindset of, okay, I'm going to be praying now. And so I'm going to
Yep.
be more focused on that. And it's actually really helpful. Like, I know when I sometimes skip the washing process, and I just jump into the prayer, I'm more distracted. It takes me longer to calm my mind and become focused on prayer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there are a couple of interesting points there that just makes me think. The ritual, as you were saying, the cleansing ritual, and I don't know exactly what it is, but you were making some motions with your hands, so I assume there's a hand washing ritual,
Yeah.
perhaps. And I I understand that you can think of it very practically
Mm-hmm.
or symbolically in this way,
Yeah.
that you are washing away the concerns
Mm-hmm.
of what you were just doing, whether you just had an argument with your spouse or your kids were acting up or you got
Yeah.
some bad news. It's like, okay, no, I'm washing all of that away. Like, that's one way of looking at that type of a ritual, where
Yeah.
it's just like, okay, those concerns now are washed away, and you kind of compartmentalize it for the moment, and then you go into your prayer practice.
Yeah.
Um, in the, I'm not sure if I'm saying this right, but in the scientific research and the literature, they call this priming. And
Mm-hmm.
one of the things that I recommend to clients is that they prime their mind whenever they're going to change a task. And that's a technical term that I use for, segmenting different tasks in your day. So for example, we're doing a podcast right now, and I then am going to go and eat dinner. So when I'm done this podcast and we say goodbye and everything's done, I'm going to take off the earbuds here, turn down the machine. And then if I really want to work on being more mindful of eating, I will take just a few moments, maybe just a minute, minute and a half. And I'm going to say to myself, in a moment, I'm going to go and eat dinner. And then I'll ask myself, how can I eat dinner excellently or with excellence? And then I'll define what I mean by that. And I'll give myself maximum of 3 things to work on. So maybe I will be mindful of the food that I'm eating. I'm going to chew at least 30 times each, and I'm just going to making this up on the spot. And then I'm going to make sure that I talk to my spouse
Mm-hmm.
and connect with her, because she's been doing her thing and I've been doing my thing in here. So those are 3 standards now that I take into that moment of changing from the task of being on a podcast to going and eating dinner. And that's a bit of a ritual. It's not a spiritual ritual like prayer would be, but it's the same.
Yeah.
I don't want to try to equalize those moments, but or those ideas, but basically it's the same. It's a parallel process. It's
Right.
a very similar idea.
Yes.
So the scientists, the secularists, they call this priming, where the
Yeah.
more religious, more spiritual, it's a ritual. Yeah.
Yeah, but these are keys to success. They're keys to creating excellence in our life and in the experiences that we have. And so you apply them in different contexts and you might call them different names, but the underlying lesson is the same. And that's what we've been talking about, that that that's just part of the beautiful, I think it's part of the beautiful reality of our lives and how things work in this world that,
Yeah.
you actually can look at so many different aspects of our life. And when you like dig beneath the surface, you find all this commonality and this universal wisdom that you can then use to when you become more consciously aware of it, then you can use it to enhance your life much more easily.
Mhm. And I think quite often trends, because of the internet that we have now, things like the concept of mindfulness, it
Yeah.
just kind of like a tidal wave just sweeps across the world consciousness. And I'm speaking about Western world right now. I'm not very familiar with what's going on in many, many parts of the world. But if we have internet access, quite often we are exposed to the same
Yeah.
big ideas all at once. And
Right.
sometimes what can happen with a concept like mindfulness is that it becomes cliche and
Mm.
it just becomes like, oh yeah, I know what mindfulness is. And then, yeah, I'm sure I do that. Or yeah, I get the idea. I get the hang of it. And then it just kind of like, whatever. But it does take conscious intention
Mm.
to to really be mindful. It does take
Yes.
work.
Yes.
That's the point of it, right? It's not an it's not a non-conscious mindfulness. It's getting out of that automatic response to a certain situation or circumstance and actually becoming aware.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Big ideas, but yeah, a lot
Yes.
to dig into.
Oh my gosh, so much to dig into. And Corey, I'm so sorry. I'm going to have to wrap up for today. I'm sorry because I'm having so much fun talking with you. But you know what? That just means you're going to have to come back and do another episode.
Sure. Yeah, my pleasure. I would love it. Always
Awesome.
good chatting.
Yes. So do you have any last words or thoughts you want to share for right now?
Just one thing that occurred just before, when I was thinking, okay, what are we going to talk about before I even logged in here with you? I was thinking that quite often the mind itself and consciousness has been thought of with certain models. And so in the beginning, it was one of the most cutting edge was that the mind and the way it affected the body was like a steam engine. And
Uh,
if we let the emotions build up, just
mm,
like steam in a closed pipe, it's going to build up, and eventually blow up, right? And that was incorrect. That's not how the emotions work. And now we've got technology, and now, okay, so the mind is like a computer, and you put in programs, and that's starting to fall by the wayside because it's not. It's more about conditioning, just like you would condition the body. You have to work at it. It's not just input something like with hypnosis,
yeah.
where you just sit down in the hypnosis chair and the hypnotist says, okay, this is how you're going to think from now on about cigarettes and you're not a non-smoker. That does work, but it's not like a program. And if it fails, then all of a sudden the person says, oh, I guess that doesn't work. And I don't have to make any effort whatsoever. But a good hypnotist will say, no, this may work instantly, or it may take some effort. And I like to use the model of the mind is like a muscle, or just like a little body, and you have to condition it. It's not just a matter of programming.
Yeah.
And that doesn't make my model right, but it makes me comfortable with it. And you just have to find a model of the mind and how you can learn to deal with the strength that you want to develop in your mental capacities that works for you. And again, just like your standard of excellence, if that works and somebody else has a different standard, that's okay. That's their life. This is mine. So I'll leave it at that.
I love it. And that's a wonderful place to leave it for now. Thank you so much, Corey. I really appreciate everything that you shared. And
Yeah, I enjoyed it.
oh, and for everyone who's listening, please know that we're going to be adding Corey's links in the show notes. So click on that link, connect with Corey, and allow him to share his more of his brilliance with you. And yeah, until you know next time, I wish you lots and lots of peace and joy.